Kate, as you see God, how important is it for that God to be really in control of the flow of the history of this entire world, the so-called divine providence?
Well, I want to say, and I've been working on St. Anselm of Canterbury, so a lot of this comes, I have to give St. Anselm the credit. I think it is hugely important, and I guess really any Christian is going to say this, it's hugely important to believe that God does have a plan, that God is guiding things, that in the final analysis, God will produce great good out of the ultimate destiny of the universe. But at the same time, I guess I have a little bit of a puzzle because I really believe in free will. I think that without real robust libertarian freedom where people really have the option to do A or B, and it's really up to the human individual to make that choice. That choice is not in any way ultimately caused by God. Because if you say that, then you have to say God causes sin, and I can't stand that.
Yeah, people try to get out of it by all sorts of compatibilism, but it's hard to see how that works.
So
your rock bottom line that you have to start with is a real robust libertarian free will where you can do otherwise than that.
Yeah, you really can, and that means that God isn't. There are these little places in history where God really isn't just making you do one thing or the other.
Are they little places in history, or are there places all the time in human life? Because every time you make a decision, God is not doing that. It's not just once in a while. It's all the time.
I guess I was imagining human history, in the bigger universe. But sure, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, you're completely right. That, and of course the worst is that sometimes what looks like a little choice turns out to be, No, you're right.
Okay.
There's these big turning points in human history. So does that mean I have to just, I guess, sad to say, God wasn't in control, things won't turn out. What I want to say is God being God, he is omnipotent and omniscient, so he can work with these really genuinely radically free choices to bring an ultimate good end. But it's not like there's only one possible good end and it's God's end and he just is causing everything to lead, to just produce this one stream of activity and now here's the end. It's that he's working with these agents, that he really wants us to be free, and it's so important that he's willing to, instead of just controlling everything, he's willing to allow us to make these choices, which he works with and brings about a very good outcome.
It seems to me there are only two general choices that we have if we really believe God is going to cause his plan to work out. Either from the very beginning, God sets an absolute predetermined way the system has to go, and then maybe introduces mechanisms that fool us into thinking we have free will. And there's some various ways that people come up with, so-called compatibilism, middle knowledge, different things where God seems to know what people are going to do freely and all of that, or more tight definitions of freedom. And I just, a little bit humorously, I say that's fooling us. All that stuff's fooling us. So if you're not willing
I say that too.
So if you're not willing to say that, if you're not willing to say God's playing tricks, then you have to go the other way, which you do, which is interesting, which is, if I believed in God, I'd be on your side. And that is that there's real free will where choices can be made. So then, now you're constrained, and I'd be with you, that if God to do that, now God has to constantly intervene to keep things on path and make mid-course corrections all the time, like a spacecraft going to Mars has to make little mid-course corrections to keep it on path, right?
Well, I mean, of course, my God, Anselm's God, is keeping every atom or subatomic particle, or whatever, everything that has being in being from moment to moment.
Okay, but that's
so the thought that God is kind of stepping in and fiddling, it's not like that. It's that absolutely everything is kept in being from moment to moment by God. So
two separate things here. One is this keeping the whole system in being, the laws, the regularities, how the underlying laws of physics, all those things can be kept in existence. That if God went away, all that would go away. So that's one thing. But then you have this choice that God could have set that system in motion with an absolute plan that we've both now rejected because it doesn't have real free will.
Yeah.
So now we have to say God keeps it in motion, but because in that process there is an infinite number of free will decisions that billions of human beings are making, and so that sits on top of this sustained regularity. So in order for God to get the end result, God has to have some kind of intervention.
But see, what I'm rejecting is the end result. I mean, the thought of intervention, if you mean God is constantly interacting with history, I go, well, of course. I mean, that's the Christian view.
Well, some people don't like that and would like to have God having set the whole thing in motion and controlled it from the start.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, that's not my view. My view would be that God is sort of constantly interacting with everything in the most radical kind of way. But I mean, I guess I objected to the term course correction.
Why?
Well, because that implies that there's...
That's what you believe. Why
no,
do you
no,
object to it?
If I believed it, I wouldn't object to it. That implies there's a course, right? And now here we are, free creatures kind of straying, and God has to get back and herd us back onto the course. And what I'm saying is, no. Because there's this radical freedom, and we really have these open options, there isn't a preset course that God had in mind that wasn't an interaction of his efforts with our freedom. The way things go is God interacting with our freedom. That's the course, and so there's no correcting it. That's just what there is.
Okay, so then you would say it's not a mid-course correction because there wasn't only a single course in God's mind, so to speak, out there, but it is a continuous interaction in which God is somewhat uncertain of what God has to do because he doesn't know what the free choices of free sentient creatures will be.
In one way, yes, in another way, no. I want to say that God is outside of time, and so in his one eternal moment that he lives, he sees it all happening.
Right.
So is he uncertain? Well, his knowledge of what we do is caused by what we do, but because he's outside of time, he sees it all. This knowledge that he has and this interacting that he does is part of that one perfect moment of his, moment's a bad word, but that perfect existence that he has. So I'm going to reject the term uncertainty. I'm going to say, no, God knows from all time what we're doing, what he's doing.
That's fair with that model of God and time.
Yeah.
But then how do you get the interaction? Your God outside of time can get you foreknowledge without interfering with libertarian free will. I'll give you that.
Okay.
Give you that.
Give me that.
Yeah, but how do you get your interaction?
Eternally. I mean, I think it's unimaginable, but that's fine. That's God.
That's
if we could imagine it, it wouldn't be God. Right. But is it logically impossible to say that all of time is there present to God and God sees you choose B and responds to your choice of B all at once? And someone might say, oh, well, but responds is a time word. And I'm just going to go, well, for us it might be, but now we're talking about God, and God can act and react simultaneously with all the events that are present to him in history.
And so you are using God in an eternal state as harmonizing both number one, human real libertarian free will, God's knowledge from all time of all events, and God's enabling the path of history to be according to God's will, whether that's one path or however else. So all three of those things are interwoven with your concept, with God and time. That's the work that you have to do.
But it's a beautiful theory of time, and my understanding is that the physicists like it too. So I think that can be done without logical inconsistency.